All right, I'm currently on the phone with Dee Wyatt. He's another musician that reached out about the interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Dee Wyatt. I'm the vocalist for the rock band out of Minnesota called Leaving Hope.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Me being in Minnesota myself, I have definitely heard of you guys being on bills and stuff, so I'm somewhat familiar with your band. But we'll eventually get there. Let's start with how you first came in contact with music. What about it was important and inspiring, made you want to pursue it and have it in your life?
Um, I grew up like most everybody else listening to it. It was all around, um, and was just kind of surrounded by it. And then had family in the arts and in the entertainment industry as well, or relatives rather. Um, and then um, and then I went to a local show one night when I was like 15, 14. I was like 14, and and I had already started writing at that point. Like I was already a poet and like a published poet by that point. But I knew there was something else like that I wanted to do. I just didn't know what. I went to a local show in my hometown of El Centro, California. And there's this place called the Old Post Office Pavilion. And it was like the original post office from in my hometown. Then they turned it into like this art pavilion with a stage for like, and they'd have concerts there and stuff like local shows. So it was like a mishmash show where you get like, hey, we're going to throw four bands on and nobody's the same genre, but to hell with it, you know? And I remember like watching these bands and I'm like, this is really cool. It's really interesting. And I was with a bunch of my friends and they're all musicians. And bear in mind, I've never played a note. I'm like horrible, can't do any damn thing. I can't sing my way out of a wet paper bag or play anything on any guitar at this point. And so I'm watching this show, and then I watched a pop punk band go up there, and they killed. They were amazing. It was a pop punk band, and they played on Warped Tour and stuff. They were kind of like locally known. They were called Forfeit, and so I saw them on stage, and I was like, man, these guys sound so like amazing. Like they sound like what you would hear on the radio. Like I wasn't accustomed to seeing that in bands. Local bands typically sounded like local bands to me. Like it was a bunch of noise. You couldn't really understand the singer. But they were really clear and real clean and they had it. It was on, like they were on point and they sounded amazing. And then they covered like a Good Charlotte song that I had heard on the radio. And they did such a good job that I genuinely thought it was their song. I was like, holy shit, like this is their song? Like that's amazing. But watching these guys, and they're only, 2 years older than me at the time, really. They're playing like the Warped Tour and stuff. And I was like, hold on, I could do that? That's a thing? I'm going to do that. And so that's when I decided. I was like, it was that night that I was like, this is it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a musician. I want to be a singer.
You mentioned that was around 14, 15 that you went to see that show, and that was kind of the pivotal moment for you that kind of launched you into pursuing it.
Yeah.
How did you kind of take the next steps from there then to continue playing?
I was fortunate in in uh in that I grew up on a block where there were musicians everywhere. So I was really lucky in that regard. Now, they didn't really teach me much, right? Except for my friend Angie, who lived, so she'd be the third house down from mine. And she played guitar. And she played like an Ibanez guitar. I couldn't tell you the model or any of that. And a little 10 amp, like practice, or 10-watt practice amp. And so like I would go over to her house and just be blown away by her learning this new Weezer song so then I challenged her one time. I'm like, oh, I do Black Hole Sun. She learned Black Hole Sun in like a day and a half. I was like, damn, that's what's up. Not the leads. She was a rhythm player. But yeah, um, so I started just like getting in and trying to develop my singing style to her playing as well. And my singing style was like, hey, how can I sound like Eddie Vedder too?
Sure.
And I can't. but yeah. So then we kind of like just met up with, we were kind of misfits in school. But the kid across the street from me, he was a drummer and he was in the drum line. Two doors down from him was another drummer. The guy directly next door to Angie, closer to me, he was a drummer. So I like literally within 4 houses, I had 3 drummers and a guitarist, and like within, my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's very coincidental just having that around. Did you know that they were into instruments like that before you kind of had your impetus moment?
Yes, I did. And it didn't hold any sway on me. Like, I was like, oh, okay, they're doing music, whatever. I actually, like, when I decided to be a musician, I was like, okay, I'm going to do guitar. And then I had such a hard time finding drummers, despite the fact that I lived on a block with 3 of them. I had such a hard time finding a drummer to like, that was like wanting to join a band, or that was any kind of dependable or anything like that. Drummers are very hard to come by, and then they really are. So if you've got a good one, hang on to him or her.
For sure. Well, so let's talk about the next steps after that. You spent some time kind of working with your friend there to kind of fine tune your vocal.
Tried, yeah, and then I gave up and I decided to play guitar instead for a while.
Okay, so that came after that.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a vocalist first, and then I sucked. But I was like, well, and really, what got me to play guitar was, well, during a guitar solo, I'm going to look stupid on stage because I can't dance.
Sure.
I don't want to just stand there and be like, okay, all awkward while the guitarist is doing this thing. Like I didn't understand how dynamics and shit worked at that point. But yeah, so then I was like, well, I'll learn the rhythm guitar, and that way I can follow along, at least, and that way I don't look stupid. And so that was really my motivation for learning the guitar. And then I stuck with it so hard that I pretty well gave up on singing for a few years, just to become proficient enough on guitar.
Okay, and then so tell me about your first kind of few attempts to get a band together and keep a band together.
So Angie and I, we tried to get one going with our friends. I think we had one band practice, but our drummer didn't have a drum set. He was playing on coffee cans that we duct taped. It was ghetto fabulous. And then we'd yell into a tape recorder, like actual tape recorder. If I'm gonna date myself a little bit here. But yeah, and then I ended up getting a punk band going with the drummer across the street, only he was gonna sing and I was gonna play guitar. And then we had another kid down the street who started playing drums. So there was 4 drummers on my block, and so he played drums, and like we recorded a little like improv demo on the spot. And then that made its way like around the high schools and stuff in town. And we're like, really? Like people heard of that? What's like? And then so that failed. And then I put a rock band together in college, and that, like most bands, right? We split up and did our own thing. It was really awesome because all of us went on to be singers in our own right and guitarists and doing our own thing. And we're all very different musicians now. So it's kind of funny to see us all sharing a band at that point. That was college. And then that fell through. And then me and one guy started a band and we ended up getting my brother on bass. And then the drummer that I grew up across the street from, he joined on drums, and we ended up playing like Southern California, Arizona, all the way up to we played the Whiskey Go-Go a couple times in Hollywood. And then the band broke up. And then my brother and I started a new band, and that went better. We're getting going in the San Diego scene and stuff, and starting to get bigger shows. Had like a bunch of a little tour run scheduled. And then just before that kicked off, our bassist passed away suddenly one night. So
it's all just been kind of this and that's been keeping it all from coming together.
I feel like that's kind of, everybody's got those kinds of stories to some degree, right? But yeah, we had a great thing going, and then that bassist Jesse, he passed away.
I was gonna say, ideally nobody dies in those situations.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish mine was a different story, But yeah, so Um, bassist for that band passed away. We ended up getting another bassist a year later, who was good friends with our original bassist, and then he got in a really bad car accident and he should have died. And we were like, okay, you know what? Maybe we don't need a bassist in this band. Like, this is ridiculous, you know. So um, he had a really long recovery. He's back to pretty well okay now. His whole life is amazing now, so nothing but love. But the band broke up. You know, my brother moved to Utah and I moved here to Minnesota, and then started Leaving Hope.
All right. Well, that leads us right into Leaving Hope. So tell me about Leaving Hope. What are you guys doing? What do you hope for this project?
You know, we're finding our way. We're and I feel like we're really hitting our groove now. Like, you know, I feel like a lot of bands kind of struggle maybe the first couple of years because they're still trying to figure out how it all works with each other, with the personalities, with just the workload, and trying to balance everything. You know, there's a learning curve and it's pretty steep. So I feel like now we're hitting our groove. I mean, this iteration of the band has only been for, you know, a couple months now. But yeah, we've been a band, like us four guys together, since right like in the heart of COVID, like shut down, the pandemic, you know, like when the whole world shut down, that's when we started. Really. And then we just recorded demos and wrote, and then started playing out when we could. And yeah, now we're like, all right, so we're focusing. We've got an album in the works. So we recorded a few singles and released those. We've got a couple others still on deck that we haven't released yet. Wink, wink.
Do you have like a specific concept for the band, or what do you kind of define as like the ideology for, you know, the content that you're making?
Honestly, like, we're all pretty real kinds of people. Like, so we just write and about our feelings and the human experience, really. There's all of us have been through different things in life. We've got different perspectives and stuff. So it's really awesome that we're able to kind of put our feelings together and it's just emotion and like in our music, really. Like, I don't pull any punches. I don't censor what I'm feeling, because, like, you know, in those moments of turmoil and inner turmoil and stuff, like is your brain censoring anything it's telling you, you know? Like, no, it's probably really not, you know, it's probably the opposite. So, yeah, like I remember music making me realize that I wasn't alone, that there were other people that felt the same way I did. So, and that was very, like, helpful to me. Like, it was just like, thank God I'm not special in this way, you know? Like,
So with everybody kind of bringing their own kind of ideology to the table, how do you go about, you know, keeping everybody engaged in the band and keeping everybody, you know, wanting to continue to participate in it?
pretty, like, we all get along great. We're all pretty close outside of the band now. It was the band that brought us together initially. And yeah, like, these guys, we're all brothers, man. Like, I would jump in front of a gun and for any of them. So it's not really hard to keep people together in Leaving Hope. Like, it really isn't. Like, we're all pretty gelling on the same page, and if we're not on the same page, we have open dialogue where we can get there really easily, you know. That's not to say that everything's always super smooth, right? And literally nothing in this band gets done without, like, some degree of, like, talking shit. like I feel like that's the first thing we do, and then we make music second, right? Like, but only talking shit to each other, really. Like,
All right. Well, tell me about, you know, what you guys have ahead of you. You hinted that there's some releases coming out.
I aim to be doing, like, much bigger tours, right? Like, that's where we're all at. We're all seeing this, like, for the long haul and to just take it as far as it'll go. because we always measured success kind of by like, hey, if we made a difference to a stranger. I know I definitely did. Like measure my definition of success in music, right? If I was able to make music that made somebody feel the way other people's music made me feel, then I've done my job as a musician, and I can die happy. And that has happened. So now it's like, okay, well, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to stop doing this. So and we were all like, well, let's just see how far we can go. To hell with it. Let's go play US Bank Stadium one of these days. So that's kind of what we're that's where our eyes are, you know. I'm not going to pretend to know how to get there. You know, I don't know every step of the way. We're kind of, like I said, it's a learning curve in this business, and it's steep.
So tell me some of your favorite memories that you have from all the time that you spent working in music, stuff that keeps you motivated.
Oh man. I've got a lot of great memories. Like, I think one of my favorite memories though is there was a stint where I was doing like solo singer songwriter stuff, and I'd go play like coffee shops and like restaurants and bars and that, and, you know, private, you know, events or parties or whatever, you know. Um, and my son got up with me while he was like 2 years old, and he brought up his little acoustic guitar, and he wore his little fedora like I was wearing, and he sat in the bench next to me, and then we just freestyled a song, and he's playing his guitar and I'm singing, and then he's like, I want to sing on the next one. Like, oh, okay. So then I just moved the mic over and I played like something on guitar, and he freestyle sang this song, and he's like two, singing it on the spot in front of people. I'm like, dude, really? I think that is probably my favorite memory, like as a musician. Just being able to do that with my kid.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for something like that for myself as well. We'll see if that happens, but I definitely hope for something like.
Oh, I'm sure it will, even if it's only while they're a toddler. Like, I feel like, oh man, it's just, I don't know. There's just something special about that. Like, my son's been on stage with me a bunch of times, in similar, and even in that same venue, but just that particular moment. And I have it like on my personal YouTube channel. It's up there, but yeah, that's probably my favorite. That I've moonlighted in cover bands as a vocalist and had some very fun private events that that get a little wild for certain holidays. So yeah, that's fun.
All right. Well, so where can people find Leaving Hope and check you guys out, and then make sure they, catch up with the releases that you're going to be doing?
You can go to Linktree. So it'd be linktr.ee/Leaving Hope. That is has all our things from Spotify to our Facebook, our YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's Spotify. The Title, I think. DistroKid is another one. And then to the different music videos that we have. And we've got a lot of stuff in store, like, and a lot of great ideas. We just got to get it down and get it out, because we're dying to. I mean, the record and the songs that we have, we've got a bunch of material, and we chose this track list intentionally for the record, and it's going to be very different from probably most things you hear just out in general as far as a record is concerned, and then like what you'd hear out of a single band. I think it's variety enough to where you're going to be like, really, am I listening to the same guy?
Nice. Very cool. So an eclectic mix of songwriting.
Yes, very much. Like I said, we all come from different backgrounds and bring different influences. So we bring all that to our style as well.
All right. Well, so I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So a message that you believe in that you think people should hear.
It happens when you party naked. No, for real though. The real message is just to love each other, man. Like, we're not all the same, but we are all the same.